Wait a minute, what's this radio saying? Shh, shh, shh. Quiet down for a minute, big sister. I gotta listen to what this radio's saying. Wrestling? Like pro wrestling? Santa Rosa? The Veterans Hall? This Saturday? $10 for ringside? APW? All Pro Wrestling? Live? At the Veterans Hall in Santa Rosa? $10 ringside? I gotta call my dad and see what this is all about. What's up, everybody? It is the former master and ruler of the world, Brutal Rob Hands. That's right, the 6'7", 313-pound master and ruler of the world has stepped outside of the squared circle and into the YouTube world to tell his stories of what it was like in my 10 years involved in the independent wrestling scene. And it all had to start somewhere. I didn't wake up one day, 313 pounds, 6'7", walked out of the farm in West Memphis, Arkansas, and just got right to choke slamming people. I wasn't goozling people from day one. It all had to start somewhere. So let me paint the picture. I was 20 years old. 20 years old. Working as my sister's caregiver, which basically consisted of taking her to Santa Rosa and going ice skating. I didn't go ice skating. She went ice skating. I took her to the ice skating. Now, 20 years old, my sister's caregiver. I'm dating a girl that I met when I was 16. We've been dating since we were 16. We'd lived together. We were both my grandma's caregiver. She passed away, and now we both have our own place and are living together. Very fast, very quick. Like I said, so I got a relationship that's really probably not the best relationship. Living in a house that, we struggling to pay rent. Oh, and I'm driving a 2004 Impala, which I can't afford at all. So I not really just trying to get a feeling for life and figuring out life. I'm only 20 years old, and things have moved really, really quick since I got out of high school. I'm a big wrestling fan. I've always been a big wrestling fan. In fact, once when I was my grandma's caregiver, that's what we used to do. I used to grind up. I would grind up some weed nice and thin, put it in the pipe, and I would hit it to get it cherry, and then I'd hand it over to her while it was cherry, and she would inhale it. Me and Grandma would sit there, and this was back in the day when I was her caregiver. This was back in the day. Well, I mean, wrestling's on 7 nights a week as it is anyways, but this was 2009. So in 2009, we had a lot of this was my grandma's stuff too, like that she had in this house. Like the DirecTV was in her name, so like that's all my grandma did was just sit on the couch and watch TV. So we had all the channels, all the stuff, the pay-per-views. So at the time, Raw was on Monday. I think we got a break on Tuesday. I don't think there was anything on Tuesday. Wednesday was main event. Then Friday was SmackDown. And, that's right. Tuesday was ECW. So Monday and Tuesday, Raw, ECW. Main event was on Thursday. And then, SmackDown was Friday. So 4 out of 5 days of the week, after I was done working with my sister, I'd go home, chill with Grandma, get stoned, watch wrestling. Really got into I would just say like the WWE product at that time, because that's all I was doing, was sitting around watching WWE with my grandma. I was a super mark. I was a super mark when I was 20 years old, and all I knew was only two wrestling promotions. I knew WCW and WWE. TNA, I knew TNA existed, but I never watched TNA. So I was very much, at 20 years old, a full-fledged, card-carrying member of the WWE universe. So even once my grandma passed away, me and my girlfriend at the time got into our own place and we're moving along with life, I still, we'd always go to live events whenever they come to town, whether it would be a Raw or SmackDown taping or a house show. We'd always go to live events, me and my ex. I'm always reading books, always watching DVDs. Like I'm always playing the video games. I'm always watching the product. I'm a super mark at 20 years old. This is like, also too, I was starting to get into a little bit of my addictions at the time. Alcohol had always been a thing, but I was getting into some more stuff that we'll talk about later. But anyways, to get to continuing on with the story, I'm a super mark, 20 years old, trying to figure out life. Definitely in some areas not making the best decisions. Still very torn up about the loss of my grandma, not dealing with that in the healthiest, correct ways. So I'm driving the car one day. I'm pretty sure my sister had like a doctor's appointment in Santa Rosa, so we're driving around one day. Listen to 107.7. No, this was still when Santa Rosa had its own rock station. This was still when 101.7, The Bone. No, 101.7, The Fox was a channel. There's 107.7, The Bone. It's in the Bay Area, and that's another rock station. But 101.7, The Fox was the one we had in Sonoma County for the longest time. And we're driving, like the monster truck ads. Saturday, except for Sunday. It's Saturday. Talk about All Pro Wrestling, live at the Veterans Hall, $10 ringside. Yeah, man, I'm a super mark. I love wrestling. I want to check this out. And I'm thinking, so I call my dad up. I go, hey, man, there's this thing called All Pro Wrestling happening at the Veterans Hall. Let's go. Yeah. Me and my dad, we used to go to a lot of live events, a lot of shows. That was something me and him did. We would go to wrestling shows, and so I think I bought my ticket. I think he bought his. Man, we show up there, or I drive down to my dad's house. We drive over to the venue. We get our tickets. Man, I'm just thinking, cool, this is gonna be fun. Just watch some wrestling, Little did I know that night would change my life for the next 10 years. So we settle in. We're like second row. We're like right there. I've been front row. I've been front row at a WWE. I've been front row, second row at WWE shows plenty of times. But there was something different about this. There was something like, I felt like I was sitting in like one of those, I don't know if you ever watched anybody, I'm sure people have, but if you ever watched back in the day, they had the old AWA shows for like an hour or so. There'd be like the AWA show for like an hour on ESPN. And I'm sitting and I'm like, man, I feel like I'm in one of those old, like these old territory wrestling shows, like the stuff you'd see on the DVDs, the stuff you'd read in the books, First match was two people that I come to know very well. I'd actually come to work with, some very closest friend, get to know very well. First ever independent wrestling match that I watched was Chupacabra versus MPT, Mr. Primetime. Both people that I came to know, both people that I've worked with. Choopy, actually, I really love Choopy. He's one of the few people that if I'm acting up or acting a fool and acting stupid and Choopy comes up and would be Burger or Brutal or whatever, would tell me to stop, I would. MPT, I didn't work a lot with MPT. Maybe a handful of matches, if that even, maybe just one match possibly. But I love MPT. I love Zach. Zach's one of my favorite people to get stoned around because he is a funny motherfucker. Zach's hilarious. Good wrestler too. Both him and Choopy are really good wrestlers and put on a really good wrestling match. And I was just like, whoa, like, this is cool. I don't remember all the other matches on that show. Strangely enough, on that show also, I watched Jody Christopherson, he'll play a role in the story very soon, or coming up later, and then the big part of this story, kind of really probably the biggest part of my story. I watched one of the biggest parts of my story. I watched that night performed on that show. The very first independent wrestling show I attended, Paul Isadora wrestled Jody Christopherson. And 5, 6, 7 years later, I had no idea how much Paul Isadora would affect my life as a professional wrestler. So it's just kind of a trip that the first ever independent show that I watched, I saw him on. Don't remember a lot of the matches, or, can't remember every single match. The heavyweight title match, they called it the Universal Heavyweight Championship. It was the boss, Derek Sanders, who I believe he just at the time came off like doing a job to Big Show on TV, versus another guy I'd come to know very well, Jekyll's the Jester. A very hard-hitting, very great character type of wrestler. Great wrestler, but a great character, very hard-hitting. Anybody that's wrestled him knows that. And then the main event was, God, I don't even remember who his tag partner was, actually. I want to say it was Big Ugly, but it wasn't. It wasn't Big Ugly. It was, God, I don't even want to say it was, had to have been Vinny. Had to have been Vinny Massaro, and, it wasn't Ugly, though. I know it wasn't Big Ugly. But the main event was a match between the Reno Scum and I want to say it was Vinny Massaro and someone else that he teamed with, but I can't be 100% honest. And that was the first time I'd seen blood before, but I'd seen like juice really up close. Luster ended up gigging in that match. Really pretty good, actually. I'm like, wow, man, there's a lot of blood coming out there. Anybody that attended that APW show back in 2010 in Santa Rosa, drop in the comments, who did the Reno Scum wrestle in the main event in the street fight? Because I want to say it was them versus Vinny Massaro and somebody, but if it was Vinny, it would have had to have been Ugly, and I know that it wasn't Big Ugly. So anyways, me and my dad, we watched that show, and every other match, the ring announcer's coming out there and hyping up. Do you want to be a pro wrestler? Sign up for the APW boot camp. And the more this show goes on, and granted, I was probably in the worst shape I had ever been in my life. This is 2010. I became my grandmother's caregiver in 2008. So I have been doing nothing since 2008 but hanging out with my grandma, getting stoned, and eating whatever I wanted. I was fat. I was probably on a shoot, real life weight, no gimmicks here. Because I don't want anybody dropping in the comments when I say this and being like, "Oh, you were light for that. You were light at that weight." I don't want anybody being a smartass and dropping in the comments. But at that time, I was probably like 215 pounds when I saw that wrestling show. I said, I don't want anybody being a smartass and dropping in the comments and being like, 215 pounds, you were tiny. Shut up. And they're hyping the boot camp. Every other match, they're hyping the boot camp. So like I said, I'm 215 pounds. I'm probably the worst shape of my life. But yeah, there were guys on that show like Jekyll's, Derek Sanders especially. He's probably the main standout one. If you were gonna like, what does a professional wrestler look like? Blonde. No, not blonde. He had brown hair, but he had blonde hair at one time. But you know, the tights, cut, no body hair, tan. You know what you would think a pro wrestler is. That was Derek Sanders, and there was guys on the shows that were like that. But then there was there was guys that reminded that, like, that guy doesn't look like a WWC. He looks like a regular me. Like, and if that guy who looks like a regular me, I'm seeing him in there doing it in front of my eyes. I'm seeing him doing it right there in front of my eyes. I could do this. And I never knew there was an independent. For my year, I'm 20 years old, being a wrestling fan my whole life. Like I said, I was a card-carrying, full-fledged member of the WWE Universe. I had no idea of the world outside of WWE unless it was TNA or the history or WCW. I watched WCW. I grew up in the Monday Night Wars, so and then, I grew up in the Monday Night Wars. WWE won those wars, so for the next several years, I just stuck with WWE. I knew there was independence out there, but like I knew it was Ring of Honor. I knew what Ring of Honor was. I didn't watch it. And I'm not saying that to Scott. I was ignorant. I'm not saying that to like, oh, I didn't watch Ring of Honor. I didn't watch TNA. I was just all about W. I'm not saying that like to brag or to scoff in any of those other promotions. I was ignorant. I had no idea of the world of wrestling around me. I just focused on what the McMahon family put out every week. That's what I grew up on. That's what I was raised on. That's what I grew up on. That's what I grew into a young adult watching. So I was blind and ignorant to the world of wrestling outside of the WWE, especially independent wrestling. So sitting there and watching the show and learning that this place has a training center and blah 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 and this and that, like I was hooked. I was hooked. I wanted to sign up. I wanted to find out more. And basically that's what happened. That show was a Saturday night. I went back home, drove back up to the house I was living at the time with the girl that I was living with at the time. Drove back up there, told her I'm gonna sign up to train to be a wrestler, and she's just like, okay, cool. Our relationship had already been strained. There was a lot of strains in our relationship at this point already, and I don't think either of us knew. I don't think either of us realized that this was going to be the final. Over the next several months, this was going to be the final strain on our relationship. Was also, she had a family tragedy. I'm not trying to blame it all, you know. Also, each side. I'm not trying to say that her family tragedy is all the fault for our relationship ending, or the fact that I wanted to become a wrestler is all the fault for all of our relationship ending. You mix the fact that I decided I wanted to pursue and become a pro wrestler, you mix that with the fact that she had an extreme family tragedy happen right then, around that same time, and little did we know, yeah, that this was when I came home from that APW show and told her I'm going to sign up this week and join the APW boot camp. Both of us didn't realize that was pretty much the end of our relationship right then and there. We just didn't realize it then. So that was Saturday. I went back up, told her I wanted to sign up. Monday or Tuesday of that week, I don't even think I called. I don't even think I called. I think I went online and did the little thing. Cause I took a brochure. They had the brochures at the show, so I went online where it said to go on the brochure, the old school brochures where it had had like Michael Modest and Spike Dudley and the Great Khali on there, because those are like, especially Spike Dudley and the Great Khali. But I filled out the stuff online. Forget exactly what it all was, you know, but your height, your weight, blah, 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 blah. Put on there that I was a football player and a BMX racer when the last time I freaking played football was when I was maybe 9, or like actually played organized football was when I was like 9. And the last time I had raced a BMX bike was when I was like 12, maybe 13. So I fibbed a little bit on that, on my athletic background. Said I liked lifting weights when maybe I did like 20 curls every week. Let me go ahead and when I said I liked lifting weights, when the extent of that meant that in the house that me and my ex had, I had a game room in there, and the extent of my weightlifting was that there was a pair of dumbbells in there that I touched every once in a while. So I fibbed on that too. So I get a phone call a few days, maybe not even a few days later, maybe just a day later. I get a phone call from Mr. Alexander himself, Roland, the owner of APW. He calls me up, sets up a meeting for that Friday. Now, remember, the APW show was on Saturday. I filled out the following week, following that Saturday, I'd filled out the stuff online, got contacted by Roland, and now we have a meeting set up on Friday. I got to go down to Hayward from where I'm living in Lake County. I got to go down there to Hayward, meet him, and we'll see what's what. And that's where I'm going to leave it at today. Just kind of told you guys a story of how I found out about my first independent wrestling show, attending my first independent wrestling show, and how that opened my eyes and opened my mind to the whole world of wrestling outside of the WWE. Because like I said, I was a card-carrying, full-fledged member of the WWE universe, knew nothing else, you know, barely knew about ROH, barely knew about TNA, and so I'm going to leave that with today's video. This is going to be a Sunday thing. I'm going to do them regularly on Sunday because I still, even though I've stepped outside of the ring for the time being, I still like to keep in shape. I still like to keep on a routine. So I still work out Mondays through Saturdays. I work out. I also have several jobs that I do, self-employed. So usually I try to stay busy between working out, working, and making money Monday through Saturday. Then when Sunday comes along, I just like to chill, eat some junk food, relax, play a little bit of PS2. And I decided, you know what, that'll be the perfect time for me to make my videos. And that'll be a regular thing. So Sunday nights, Brutal Rob Hands will be live, pal, on YouTube, telling stories about how he got into pro wrestling, what it was like when he was in pro wrestling, and some of the stupid decisions that he made, which ultimately led him to maybe not staying in pro wrestling. But this has been Brutal Rob Hands. It smells like a story time, man. And I will be back next Sunday with my next video, which give you guys a little bit of not a spoiler, but a little bit of a tease for it. Since I told you guys about my first show that I attended as a fan on the other side of the railing, I will be telling you guys a story next week of meeting Mr. Alexander face-to-face for the first time, and the first time that I ever met a pro wrestling carny. And I'm not saying that in a negative way. I'm not saying that in a bad way. Roland was he was one of the last of an era of wrestling promoters that is long gone. So I'm not saying carny in a bad way, because my experiences with them were never negative. And we're going to get into those experiences. But first, I'm going to tell you guys a story of meeting Mr. Alexander, and then the first show that I attended, not as a fan, but still not as a fan, but I still feel like an outsider looking in. Because on the next show after that, I got bit by the bug, the security bug, and man, I was hooked. But I'm getting a little too far ahead, so I'm going to leave it right there. I will see you guys in the next video. We're live, pal.